The truth has a strange way of hiding in plain sight. Sometimes it lives quietly inside ordinary routines, inside the smiles of a family, inside years of memories that seem completely real, and sometimes it waits for the smallest moment, a routine medical test, a simple question, or a random coincidence, to reveal something that changes everything people thought they knew about their lives. For 10 years, Sarah Collins believed she was living the life she had always dreamed of. Every morning began the same way in their quiet suburban neighborhood in Michigan. Before the sun rose, Sarah would quietly step into the kitchen, preparing breakfast while the house was still peaceful and silent. The smell of toast and fresh coffee slowly filled the air as the day began. Soon after, she would gently walk down the hallway and knock softly on the bedroom door of her son, Ethan. Ethan was 10 years old, full of curiosity and energy. Like most boys his age, mornings were not his favorite time of day, but Sarah always knew how to wake him up with patience and warmth. From the outside, the Collins family looked perfect. Sarah and her husband Daniel had built a loving home together. Daniel worked long hours, but no matter how busy life became, he always made time for Ethan. On weekends, he coached Ethan's little league baseball team. After school, he helped him with homework, and every night before bed, Daniel would sit beside him and listen to stories about his day. To Ethan, Daniel wasn't just a father, he was a hero, and to Daniel, Ethan was everything he had ever hoped for. Friends and neighbors often joked that Ethan looked just like Sarah. He had the same brown hair, the same gentle smile, and the same thoughtful personality. No one ever questioned that Ethan was their child. In fact, the idea seemed so obvious that it never even crossed anyone's mind to think otherwise. But life has a way of hiding its deepest secrets where no one thinks to look. The moment that would change everything came from something completely ordinary. For several weeks, Ethan had been feeling unusually tired. At first, Sarah assumed it was just school stress or a busy schedule. But when the fatigue continued, she decided to take him to the doctor for a checkup. The doctor ran several basic tests but suggested something extra, just to be safe, a genetic screening. It was simply a precaution to rule out a rare hereditary condition that could explain Ethan's symptoms. The test required a DNA sample from both parents. It was routine, harmless, and nothing anyone worried about. Sarah agreed immediately. Daniel didn't think twice about it. After all, they had nothing to hide. 2 weeks later, Sarah and Daniel returned to the hospital expecting to hear that everything was normal. Instead, the doctor's expression told them something was wrong before he even spoke. He asked them both to sit down. The room felt unusually quiet. Then he slowly explained something that made the world feel like it had stopped moving. There appears to be a mistake in the test results, the doctor said carefully. Ethan's DNA does not match either of you. For a moment, neither Sarah nor Daniel understood what he meant. The words sounded impossible. Sarah had carried Ethan for 9 months. She remembered every painful contraction, every anxious moment in the hospital room, and the overwhelming emotion when she held him in her arms for the first time. Daniel had been standing right beside her that day. He had cut the umbilical cord himself. How could a child they had raised for 10 years not be biologically theirs? At first, everyone assumed the hospital had made a laboratory error. DNA tests can be complicated, mistakes happen, so the test was repeated. Days later, the results returned again. This time there was no doubt. The answer was exactly the same. Ethan was not biologically related to Sarah, and he was not biologically related to Daniel. The news left the Collins family trapped in confusion and disbelief. Questions began to swirl in their minds. If Ethan was not their biological child, then whose child was he? And where was their real child? Sarah replayed the memories of Ethan's birth over and over again. She remembered the hospital room, the nurses, the long, exhausting hours of labor. There had been no sign that anything unusual had happened, but when Daniel contacted the hospital where Ethan had been born, the possibility that everyone feared slowly began to emerge. 10 years earlier, 2 babies had been born within minutes of each other. The first was Ethan Collins. The second was a baby named Lucas Bennett. Both babies had been delivered on the same night in the same maternity ward, and suddenly a terrifying possibility became impossible to ignore. Somewhere in that hospital, 10 years earlier, 2 newborn babies may have been switched. The hospital immediately launched a full investigation. Old records were reviewed carefully. Staff members from that night were contacted and questioned. The situation was extremely rare, but not impossible. Eventually, investigators located the Bennett family. They lived only about 40 miles away. When the Bennett family first received the phone call from the hospital, they were confused and skeptical. The idea sounded unbelievable, but there had always been something that quietly puzzled them. Lucas Bennett looked very different from the rest of his family. While both parents had dark hair and olive skin, Lucas had lighter features and a different appearance entirely. Still, they had never questioned it. Lucas was their son, and they loved him more than anything. But when the possibility of a hospital mix-up was explained, both families agreed to undergo DNA testing to finally discover the truth. Days later, the results arrived, and they confirmed what no one had wanted to believe. Lucas Bennett was the biological son of Sarah and Daniel Collins, and Ethan Collins was the biological son of the Bennett family. Two babies had been switched at birth. For 10 years, two families had unknowingly raised each other's children. The discovery created an emotional storm that no one could prepare for. Both families arranged a private meeting through hospital mediators. When they met for the first time, the room filled with tension and emotion. Two mothers looked across the room at the children they had unknowingly lost 10 years earlier. The children looked back, confused by the strange situation unfolding around them. Tears filled the room, but the most painful realization slowly became clear. Even though biology had been mistaken, love had not for 10 years. Sarah had been Ethan's mother for 10 years. The Bennetts had been Lucas's parents. Those relationships were built on birthdays, scraped knees, bedtime stories, and thousands of ordinary moments that create a family. How could anyone simply undo that? The legal complexity of the situation soon led to a courtroom battle. Lawyers debated parental rights, hospital negligence, and emotional damages. The hospital admitted responsibility for the tragic mistake, but the most important question remained unanswered: what was best for the children? Psychologists explained to the court that forcing the children to suddenly change families could cause serious emotional trauma. The bonds they had formed over 10 years were real, and breaking them overnight could leave lasting psychological scars. After weeks of emotional testimony, the judge finally delivered a decision that no one had expected. The children would not be forced to change homes. Instead, both families would continue raising the children they had loved for the past 10 years, but they would slowly build relationships with their biological children as well. The hospital agreed to pay millions of dollars in compensation for the life-altering mistake, yet everyone in the courtroom understood something important: no amount of money could repair 10 years of lost time. Today, the Collins and Bennett families share a relationship unlike anything they ever imagined. Ethan still lives with Sarah and Daniel. Lucas still lives with the Bennetts, but the families visit each other often now. The boys have slowly learned the truth about their birth. At first, the story was confusing and difficult to understand. But over time, they began to realize something powerful. Family is not defined by DNA alone. It is defined by love, by the people who stayed beside you when you were sick, by the ones who taught you how to ride a bicycle, by the ones who were there for every birthday, every scraped knee, and every moment that shaped who you became. A simple hospital mistake changed the lives of two families forever, but it also revealed a truth that many people spend their entire lives trying to understand. Being a parent is not only about biology. Sometimes it's about the love you choose to give and the people who choose to stay.